Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. We love you in Canada. We also love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful June the 8th, 2020. Grondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we've progressed halfway through the year. We're 94 days away from the start of the potential NFL season, and also want to say thank you to all those frontline healthcare workers, Charlton, who have not turned their backs on the pandemic like our federal government has. The frontline workers, the nurses, the doctors, and the paramedics.
They are doing a fabulous job. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. Also, Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa from anywhere in the world. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV or you'll be looking at a still picture. Want to make sure we're still taking the pause for the Veterans Crisis Hotline. They are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, as we think about some 22 veterans that they losing their lives to suicide, which is an horrific disease that many people have seen and forgotten about in the United States with all these other troubling situations that are going on, Charlton. But our veterans have always been there for us as a country. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, is a way for them to get some mental and social relief, someone to talk to is non-judgmental. As we think about suicide and mental illness in this country, Charlton, people look at it as an embarrassment more than anything else, but it is not. People suffer from various reasons. And so when we think about what our veterans have gone through when they served this great country, Charlton, they come back with a lot of stress and different ways of thinking about things. So any way you can get them assistance to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, hopefully we can help save lives by doing that.
We love doing our part. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get some help. Really appreciate that. Hotline is out there to help a lot of people. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T, Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. And when you reach out to them, tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. Sports teams are going to start doing it again, too. You can, too. Watch TV work for your real estate. 800-772-8624, 800-772-8624 for opportunities in real estate. Go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can find out about opportunities also in the world of real estate. Big C, man, I'm telling you, there's a song that I used to hear from back in the day, and it's from the sea to shining sea. I don't remember all the words, but I remember that part, from sea to shining sea, with Big C all over the universe. A lot of people are really paying homage to Black Lives Matter and what it means. We even have some good old boys in NASCAR. Just want to get your thoughts on how you're feeling, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, as we look at this escalation and continuation of the protests, the national and worldwide protests on the horrific murder of George Floyd, Charlton, I think people need to look at the seminal moment that we're living through. I mean, we've gone through many incidents like this in American society, but this one seems to have some gravity to it, Charlton, as we look at this. You know, to get change in America is that you have to get white people to believe what black people believe. That's the only time that you ever have change in America. It just can't be one-sided. It has to be bipartisan.
Yeah.
And when we look at the greatest divisive time that's ever been in the United States, Charlton, the Civil War, is that white people believed that black people no longer needed to be imprisoned and enslaved, Charlton. And they fought for that freedom for those people to give them the right to be human.
You know, it's amazing what happens when people start to talk, because a lot of times people don't talk and they just assume that they know what another person is thinking. But it's through communication. A lot of people have made everything happen in the world. I would say, I know there was a gentleman back, maybe a month or two ago that said some negative things, said the N-word on a simulated race that they had on television. But NASCAR's Bubba Wallace wears a black shirt, a black T-shirt called, Black Lives Matter. Kevin Harvick wins the NASCAR Cup down in Atlanta. And of all sports, I would say, unless I'm wrong, I think NASCAR has the fewest amount of African Americans. But when I saw the affinity that a lot of these white men, as we call our white brethren, that they spoke out about Black Lives Matter, and really, when I think about it, Big C, it's amazing. Before taking the green flag, there was 40 cars that stopped in front of the empty grandstands, and they listened to a message from NASCAR President Steve Phelps and observed a 30-second moment of silence in the wake of George Floyd's passing. We haven't even had the President of the United States do that, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you have to think about who the President of the United States is, Charlton. You got a casino owner who was a game show host who doesn't have any sensibility about what human life matters, Charlton, other than finance.
Yeah.
And to use George Floyd's name as a prop one day and giving a speech out in the Rose Garden, Charlton, I thought was quite disrespectful just to human beings in totality.
Yeah.
And as we look at what's going on in every sector of the United States, Charlton, people are speaking out. But you got to have momentum in speaking out. It just can't be a one-off when you're doing that, Charlton. It has to be a continuum.
Yeah.
And that's what we've seen from the protesters in the street, Charlton, is the continuum. Now can you get the rest of the society to have this continuum to go along with the people in the street, Charlton? Because these atrocities that have occurred against black people in America have occurred for 400 years. And when you have white people say, well, I don't understand why they keep complaining and stuff. Well, you never have to deal with that. White people have always had the benefit of the doubt when it comes to anything.
Yeah.
If a black person calls law enforcement, they're more likely to be in trouble with the law enforcement and in peril than the person that they call them on. If the person is white, Charlton,
yeah,
they're going to look at the white person as being the victim in the situation.
Yeah.
So as when you look at generations of white people, and if you affiliate with them, you can ask any white friend you have. Did you have to explain to your kids when they left home what to do to come back home safe? Did your parents have to explain to you what to do to come back home safe if you interact with law enforcement, Charlton? They don't do that. So they don't have any understanding what black life is about.
Yeah. I think and sometimes it just takes dialogue. That's at some point in time, if Dr. King had the prescience to realize that dialogue will change things. I want to just finish out on one more thing that Phelps said, because I didn't really expect this from NASCAR before the White House. Mentioned by Phelps, the president said that the black community and all people of color have suffered in our country, and it's taken far too long for us to hear the demands for change, and our sports must do better, and our country must do better. I've been saying to you, and we both have our own opinions, and I've been saying in my own thinking, and tell our good white brethren and good black brethren and Native American brethren, all of us, men and women, until we speak up and don't just leave it up to black Americans, it's just going to be it's here for a flicker and then it's gone. So I am impressed with the number of decent people, just good, decent people. On the flip side of that, Big C, there are a lot of knuckleheads that are really letting their feelings known. They don't believe in Black Lives Matter for nothing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, Black Lives has spoken up for 400 years about the atrocities that have been done to them in this country. And I believe that the Native Americans, the Indian culture, Charlton, has spoken up at least for that same length of time.
Yeah.
It's just being oppressed by a white society, Charlton, for 400 years in America, the things that they have done. When you look at what they did to the Native American culture here in America, Charlton, they took their land. they put them on reservations in the worst land in America, Charlton, hoping that they would just continue to die out.
Yeah.
They knocked off most of the native species that they survived on, Charlton. They committed atrocities against that culture of people, Charlton. They didn't enslave them because they had the blacks to enslave. But when you look at what those two cultures, who have constantly had dialogue with white America, Charlton, about why. How long will this go on? Why are we being oppressed? Why are we being victimized?
Yeah.
These conversations have always been had by Native Americans and black people, Charlton. But white people have not wanted to hear it because it has benefited them. And as long as it was benefiting them, Charlton, there was nothing wrong. You know, when they see police officers, they don't see police officers coming in their neighborhood, beating up people, arresting people, Charlton, shooting people, going to the wrong house. They don't see that in their neighborhood. And they always have the excuse because it doesn't happen to them. Well, they would not have done it if they had not have done something wrong or probable cause. That's always the excuse, Charlton. You cover for the person who looks like you.
Yeah. You know, ironically, it takes all people to have dialogue. I remember going to see a fight, and the cut man, one of the most famous cut men in the world, his name is Stitch, and he was at the fight stitching up some guys too. And a colleague of mine, she's a Caucasian lady, and she was saying we were on a Native American tribe where a lot of people would go to these casinos and have these fights, and she was saying, I can't believe that these people have these beautiful homes and they don't have to pay taxes. And I said, do you know that they had their land taken away from them? And so that's a band-aid. And she was saying, yeah, but it doesn't make sense. I didn't have anything to do with it. But sometimes people just don't see farther than the tip of the nose. Big C, would you believe white English protesters pulled down statues of Edward Colston, the 17th century slave trader, and they threw it in the river? And I think, unlike many times when we see stuff in the United States, I know down south people had a fit when they wanted to take down some of those Confederate statues. You have white Americans in England that are tearing down statues from slave trade. They're white people, Big C, so the whole world is starting to wake up. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, as you recognize the statues from around the world, Charlton, in most places, most of these people were tyrants that have statues up, Charlton, and they were able to get these statues erected because of the power that they possessed at that time.
Yeah.
But what they also meant in a negative light to society around the world, Charlton, has not been good. If you look at them in the light of today's perspective, these are very evil people, and yet the reason why cultures want to keep these statues around, they say, well, it's a living part of the history. Well, if that's the case, well, why don't you just create a hanging statue of a body hanging from a tree? That's a part of the history of America also that we don't want to celebrate. But as long as you figure that white person that's in that statue still can inflict some fear and anger within the body, then you feel that you have an advantage.
Well, ironically, when you mentioned that there are no statues of people having lynchings and statues of people, there is a museum, I believe, down in Alabama. But at the same time,
the museum is there. But what I'm saying is put a hanging statue next to the person that you're celebrating for creating that situation, Charles.
Well, there's a congressman that voted against an anti-lynching bill that's on protest as we speak. It's not fair, man. But I'm telling you, there's a guy, we talked about it last week, can't remember his name at this time, but he's a good
Rand Paul, the United States Senate will not pass the anti-lynching bill.
Yep.
And the Senate is held by Republicans.
Yeah.
And they will not pass the anti-lynching bill. Rand Paul out of Kentucky, one of the Jim Crow slave states, is holding it on his desk.
Yeah, I guess it means something to Rand Paul. Maybe if he saw his grandchildren hanging from a tree, he might want to pass a bill then, or maybe he wouldn't. You never know the hearts of some people, Big C. But I do want to say, if you think about it, all over the world, in fact, all over the universe, people from Africa to England, France, Canada, Japan, Australia, South America, Korea, except for the White House. Now, I know as I'm talking to some of my brethren, some, for the most part, that happen to be POTUS supporters, we've had people from Africa, England, France, Canada, Japan, Australia, South America, and South Korea, and POTUS was still arguing that Drew Brees should not have apologized. And people don't understand. I guess they do understand, but not everybody wants to get along. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't understand the symbolicism of racism in America, because white people don't want to address the pain and hardship that black people have to go through. When Colin Kaepernick took a knee 4 years ago on the sidelines, Charlton, to protest against injustice and police brutality in America, Charlton, white people were scared because he was telling the truth.
Yeah.
And in their hearts, they knew what he was saying was right and accurate, Charlton. But instead of addressing the issue, you lie about the issue like you've been lying forever, Charlton. Let's say, well, he's anti, flag, he's anti-military.
Yeah.
The military had nothing to do with Colin Kaepernick's stance. The flag had nothing to do with Colin Kaepernick's stance. If anyone understands the symbolism of taking a knee and bowing, that's the ultimate respect.
Yeah.
That is paying respect to a higher being, Charlton, not a symbolic symbol that you have sitting on the field, Charlton. But when you sit there and look at what the flag has stood for in America against black people and against Native Americans, Charlton, that flag actually was a symbol to oppress them. If you really think about the origins of the United States flag, it was a symbol to oppress the Native Americans and the black people, the slaves at that time, Charlton. That's what it stood for. It did not stand for liberty for them. But, you want to take it and make it dress for whatever you want to put lipstick. It's like putting lipstick on a pig. When you want it to look good for this event, you'll put some lipstick on it.
Yeah.
But when you think about it in totality, what it has done to black people in America and have white people, like they say, you cannot understand a man until you walk a mile in his shoes.
Yeah.
And when you live in one of those privileged neighborhoods and say, well, I don't understand what they're talking about. I've never dealt or seen anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I even, because sports, as we always say, Big C, sports will bring our whole country together. And there's no one, there's some guys that I know that are no longer on the air, Northern California, and they've been saying, man, you guys talk too much politics, man, and he's off the air. It's funny. I'm not saying everybody's all going to do what they got to do, but the platform, because we just want to speak truth. We're not perfect, but I do believe the whole world, it's like the whole world is doing what Big C Sports does. And I mean that because there's nobody on TV talking about how big, strong, and fast somebody is. They do that too, but they give equal time to real things when the house is burning. I want to bring up one of your friends. I know you don't want to claim him as a friend, but Senator Lindsey Graham, in 2015, he was on a program, I think it was CNN, and he said that Donald Trump is a race-baiting, xenophobic bigot. And now POTUS, the face of the Central Park Five, would you believe? And some of my friends that say that he's a good man because he's tough on people, he is talking about, there's talk come out of the White House, the same guy that said fire the SOBs and sick dogs, vicious dogs, and tear gas on the protesters. There's some talk that he's going to give a speech about race. Does that make sense to you, Big C? It does.
That's like having a pyromaniac, Charlton, give a seminar on
fire.
That's what that is. I mean, to have somebody speak in hollowness.
Yeah.
We've had these protests going on for 2 weeks, Charlton, here in America. And you would expect from a leadership perspective that the president would have come out and asked for calm and resolution at some point along the way a week ago or so, Charlton, but he has not. All he wanted was a photo op, to run protesters in a peaceful situation out of a park, Charlton, with rubber bullets and tear gas.
Yeah.
A day after he was hiding in the bunker. And the Attorney General, William Barr, said he was hiding in the bunker the day before they had the photo op at St. John's Church across the street, Charlton, even though he lied that he was just going down there to inspect.
Take a look.
The bunker. How the hell would he inspect the bunker? What would he know about it?
Yeah. Oh, man, he could have at least hit an Air Force One, but he would have to go outside to get on that thing. He's hiding in his bunker, all right. But I believe, and we all got to make a tone. That's funny. He was going down to inspect the bunker. Don't they have butlers to do that? Big C, it's all fair, level war, elite Secret Service. I do appreciate when people can make a mistake. And there's a song, and I might be wrong about who sang it, but it's Stand By Your Man. Okay, she had a better voice than I did. Drew Brees' wife, she actually apologized about her husband's take on standing for the flag and juxtaposed to Black Lives Matter. And again, like my friend that sometimes we would cover fights together, people have a chance to say, you know what, I got to walk a mile in your shoes and see things. But by the time people are through high school, Big C, they know what the other shoes look like. not that Drew Brees wants his wife or needs his wife to come out in a tone or apologize from, but at least, I'm just going to say this, people don't have to agree, at least sometimes men can listen to their spouse if their spouse is decent and fair. And maybe is that bad when his wife comes out and does it too, or is it just kind of extra frosting in the cake? Big C, your thoughts?
It's bad all the way around, Charlton, because, I mean, this is 3 apologies in a week. You know, one apology wasn't enough. You weren't sincere about the first apology, so you came out with a second apology.
Yeah.
And now your wife is out apologizing. Sometimes there's a little gasoline that you're throwing on a fire,
Yeah.
Charlton.
Yeah.
It's not necessitated because it's already burning.
Yeah.
But to keep coming out apologizing over and over, that means you knew what you did initially was wrong.
Yeah. You know, there was a thing that she was quoted as a verse. Everybody loves Dr. King now, isn't it something? It was a verse that Dr. King quoted. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And there's something that you always say. There's a movie you quoted before, and I heard it on some other radio programs today in Northern California. It was Sam Jackson and Matthew McConaughey, and it was at A Time to Kill. Just imagine she's white. And for people that say, well, you know, we don't want to talk about race too much because they want to get ready for football, I appreciate for the first time, even in my life, that I've seen people from all over the world. And I'm just going to assume, based on what I see in my eyes, but sometimes my eyes don't see clear, Big C. It seems like there are more white Americans protesting the streets than there are African Americans, Big C. Your thoughts? That makes sense to you or to me?
Well, there is. There's a lot more whites out there, and that's what makes the movement happen, Charlton, is that you have to have a majority to make a movement happen.
Yeah.
The reason why people say that they don't want to talk about race, Charlton, because they're racist.
Yeah.
They don't want to let themselves come out and be seen, because all of a sudden you'll get comfortable when you're talking about race, when you're a racist, and you'll say the things that you truly say in private amongst your friends, Charlton.
Yeah.
So for people to say they don't want to talk about race and now it's not the time and they're uncomfortable letting you know what they are.
Yeah.
There's always a time to talk about racism, Charlton, racial inequality in America, unjust prosecution in America, Charlton.
Oh, yeah.
If this is a nation about equality, then you should want to talk about equality.
Yeah.
Don't talk about the injustice that you perpetuate in this country.
Well, let me get your thoughts on something, too. And I don't know if you're a big social media guy the way I am. I mean, I'm not that big on it, but I do pay attention to it. And sometimes people will say, hey, I support you. And then you find their social media, kind of like Joey Bosa's social media back in the day, or who's the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills Browns, his social media. The guy that down there, he just got drafted by Buffalo, also came out of University of Georgia. Sometimes with those social media, it doesn't drive with what comes out of their mouth because it's a little bit different. But I do appreciate that we talked about President Obama, obviously, and Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton. They didn't appreciate the way POTUS wants to sick vicious dogs and ominous weapons on Americans. And then you hear Republicans, President Bush, General Colin Powell, Mitt Romney, the 47% Mitt Romney, Big C, I guess he's capitulated. They all call out Trump on his racism, and they're asking for decent white people all over the world to turn their back on this xenophobia hatred that is, I'm telling you, he's fallen so far in the polls he might need a parachute, but it may not work this time, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, what does a poll mean, Charlton, at this time? Until people speak out, I mean, we can always have these anonymous polls that are going around, but the biggest voice in America, you see it daily and nightly on television, are the young protesters out on the street, Charlton. Those people have the ability to register to vote. They can make a change, and that's what we look at in America. The people who are staying quiet while all this is going on, Charlton, are Trump backers.
Yeah.
When you're silent, that means that you're complacent with what's going on. You have not, opposed what's been going on from the administration on down. Even, the only thing that you oppose is the protest on the street. And the thing that I don't understand, and I don't believe in destroying somebody's property, Charlton, having businesses of my own and not wanting that to happen, even though you have insurance. But when you destroy somebody's life by taking it, Charlton, you can't replace that. You can replace anything material-wise, Charlton, because we have insurance on it, whether it's a car, whether it's a building, whether it's a pair of shoes. Generally, we have something that covers that.
Yeah.
But when you take a life, and that life doesn't no longer has a chance to rejuvenate itself, Charlton, people are not opposed to that from a white perspective, Charlton. They've been okay with that. But they're talking about the destruction of property. I've seen more emphasis put on the destruction of property than the loss of life throughout this entire protest, whether it's on the peaceful side, Charlton, or whether it's on the police side.
Yeah, I've seen people keep saying, but I can't believe the property is insured and can be restored. But if someone had to put, like you said, imagine they're white, and that's the point I want to make. People automatically assume, well, those black folks are out there burning down neighborhoods. Most of the people out there in the streets are Caucasians. There've even been some on the news in the Bay Area. They were having people with white masks on, spray painting Black Lives Matters on buildings and breaking glass. And their black protesters said, hey, don't do that. They're going to blame us. I mean, that's a fact. People can do that. I want to bring this thought to you because you and I are in the media. And when I still know that there's some people who say, yeah, Black Lives Matter, let's just play sports. This is interesting because we're talking about criminal justice reform. There's a news reporter, sports reporter. Her name is Erin Andrews. She works for Fox Sports. Remember that time, I think it was 2016, that she had won, I guess they had gave her a settlement of $55 million because a white man he saw her naked, or I guess he set up some type of device in a hotel room, and they wanted to sue for $70 million, but they ended up being $55 million. She was awarded $55 million because a white man saw her naked. I juxtapose that Colin Kaepernick, a Super Bowl quarterback for the 49ers, when he took a knee because he wanted to bring attention to law enforcement and the systemic abuse of black men that even Roger Goodell has agreed with, in the last couple of days. He lost his job. This is for many people, especially Caucasian Americans. When a white woman said that she was distraught because another white man had saw her naked in a hotel, I guess with some type of wire camera he had set up. They thought it was worth $55 million. Big C. Colin lost his job. Ahmaud Arbery was shot down by white men. And then you had the same thing that just happened in Indianapolis. Is there a price tag, if that makes sense, with Floyd being murdered, George Floyd being murdered, and Breonna Taylor being murdered? Do you think they're going to get a $55 million set? That makes sense to you, Big C? Your thoughts?
Charlton, that's a lack of empathy for black people in America. You can take a black life, destroy a family, Charlton, destroy children's opportunity to have a parent to bring them up, and nobody thinks anything about it. They say it's justified. But you have a white woman, Charlton, who is electronically surveillanced by a white man in a hotel room and shoots a video of her disrobing, and that's worth $55 million from a jury because she suffers mental anguish. This is what I talk about in racism, Charlton, is that white people don't understand what black people go through. For a white woman to have her body viewed, that meant that she's going to be mentally distraught her entire life, Charlton. She spends a living walking in locker rooms with half-naked men.
Yeah.
That's how she earns her living, interviewing half-naked men. And she's not emotionally distraught by that, but she has somebody looking at her in that same parameter, Charlton. All of a sudden, she's emotionally distraught, and she can't function, but she has no problem from a week-to-week basis being in front of these men. So you can tell the lie that you want to do. She got that judgment based on racism, Charlton, and racism against a white man for doing what they do. They do that all the time. You think about a lot of the atrocities that the white church has done, Charlton, against a lot of kids around America. There's huge settlements that are constantly paid out from white men doing something wrong. But when a black family loses a breadwinner, Charlton, they don't feel that there was any value in that loss.
Yeah, and people can look it up because we got to be real. Colin Kaepernick is out of work because he stood up to being murdered. It doesn't want it to happen anymore. White ladies get seen naked, and they say that's worth $55 million, and people wonder why Black Lives Matter, and they say, no, all lives matter. All people are not getting awarded by a Caucasian jury $55 million because they saw somebody unclothed. To me, I'm just being real, Big C. That doesn't make any sense, but that's where a lot of people have to come to that moment of Jesus. They have a Jesus moment and pay attention. And before we come up on the Big C pause, I just want to say I believe that something's happening. I believe it may be even spiritual. Some of my religious pastors friends are telling me that that sometimes God gets our attention through the most miraculous of ways. We'll take the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. When we come back, I want to talk to Big C about some things going on in the world of sports. And also, can we, like Rodney King said, can't we all just get along? We'll be back in just a moment, Big C. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. And there's so many applications that I love. Even I was paying attention, the Netherlands, getting some hits from the Netherlands following Big C Sports. That's over there in Berlin, Germany. So really appreciate people paying attention to Big C Sports. Big C, let me ask your thoughts. It's my own opinion. And I don't know, it's a sad dog that won't wag his own tail. Some people even cut the tails off their dogs. That's also, I thought that was very egotistical to do that to make them look tough. But would you just give me your thoughts in the whole world, from London to Australia, Mexico, United States, Africa? There's something about people that we're seeing now that make the whole world stand up and say no. They did what Laura Ingraham said, shut up! Like Laura Ingraham said, shut up. The whole world is doing that now. For the defense of decency, it just happens to come in black skin. What is it about the sports that's connecting people also, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you see what's going on, you have to understand also that blacks live in all of these countries, especially in Australia. The Aboriginal people of Australia, Charlton, have suffered just like the Native Americans and blacks in this country. When you look at the black population in England, people think that it's white. There's a huge black population over in England, Charlton, and this is what's drawing everybody together, Charlton, because these people have let the rest of the world know that this is a problem. This is a systematic problem of racial injustice and racial profiling worldwide, not just in America. We're just part of the problem, Charlton, but this is a universal problem when people of power do not want to share the power. And that's what it comes down to in America. America does not want to give up equality, just as many other places around the world. You don't want to give up financial equality, Charlton. You don't want to give up housing equality, Charlton. And so you fight that to the last breath. And that's what we've seen through oppression around the world when people have constantly talked about reparations. You want to give reparations to black people in America, Charlton?
Yeah.
Give all black people free college education. Give all black people housing relief on their mortgage. Give them mortgage relief. Take care of their mortgage for them, Charlton. If you want to give reparations, give black people a level playing field in America. That's reparations. And then we say go from that point.
Yeah, there's actually a bill. It's like the Marshall Plan, where the United States rebuilt Germany after World War II, and that's with the American taxpayer dollar. And when you think about our European countries, it's not as if they came back on their own after they were destroyed in the war, Big C. That was United States under Harry Truman in 1948. He signed the Marshall Plan into law, and that helped rebuild Western Europe in Germany, and nobody batted an eye about it. Nobody said, I can't believe.
Harry Truman also denied black soldiers when they returned from World War II their GI bills, Charlton, to go to college as well as get loans for homes. So whatever Harry Truman did for Europe, he denied blacks in the United States.
Yeah, he sure did. So they I think for the most part, it had the right color skin pigmentation. So he was able to take American tax. And people love going to Europe on vacation. They can't believe when they go over to Italy, when they go over to Paris, when they go over to Germany, and they love traveling. But Big C, that took United States money in 1948 with the Marshall Plan to rebuild it. And at the same time, as you mentioned, the black American soldiers that helped defeat Adolf Hitler and his regime came back to Jim Crow laws, redlining laws, housing discrimination. And imagine being in front of a court system, for the most part, if you're an athlete or entertainer or a 9-to-5 worker, for the most part, you're looking at a Caucasian judge. And the fact that your friend down Rand Paul has refused. See, we've already had the Marshall Plan. Rand Paul, that good old boy from Kentucky, has refused in 2020 to sign an anti-lynching bill to make it a federal hate crime. That's a white boy. But the Marshall Plan was done over 70 years ago. And we're still asking for some type of justice. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this has been the plight of blacks in America. As this boiling point that we've gotten to as a culture and as a country, and as we look upon it on a daily basis, and who keeps asking the question why? It's the white people that keep asking the question, why is this continuing? Why is this going on? It's the same question that blacks ask from the opposite perspective. Why is this continuing? Why is this going on? Why is oppression continuing? Why is assault continuing, Charlton? Why is lack of opportunity continuing in America? You know, it's like last week they talked about unemployment went down. Well, unemployment for blacks went up. White unemployment went down. Black unemployment went up. So where's the equality in that, Charlton? Look at it from the true perspective. We're getting the lesser end of the stick as a culture.
Yeah.
We're getting the short end of it. We're getting the shaft. And,
Yep.
and as you look at white culture, they say, well, things are doing well for us. You know, maybe they're not trying hard enough. That's always the scenario. Maybe they're not trying hard enough.
Yeah, I think when you look at White House spokeswoman Kelly Magalini, you know, she uses she's always sun tanning and bleaching her hair out, Big C. But I think about it, the Marshall Plan by President Truman, Harry Truman, rebuilt Western Europe, and after World War II, 1948, Civil Rights Act was signed July 2nd, 1964. Now think about that. Americans that say Black Lives Matter, well, all lives matter. We rebuilt Europe in 1948 and did not even get the civil rights signed by Lyndon Johnson until July 2nd, 1964. He was inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And up to 2020, Black Lives Matter. I Can't Breathe, Marshall Plan, Building Back Americans for 2020. I think that they could use President Truman's example. And I know it's already on the desk of the White House. I think the next administration better look at it. At the same time, people got to understand Europe didn't get rebuilt on its own. That came out of taxpayer dollars. And as far as last I checked, Black Americans are also paying taxes back when that happened. Big C, I want to bring up something that I think is important too. 4 years ago, four black NFL, I think it was 4 years ago, black NFL players took a stance by taking a knee during the playing of the national anthem in solidarity against social injustice and for social reform. And why did white America turn it into a racial event, Big C? That makes sense to you. Your thoughts?
They did, and it's been a perpetuating racial event for the past 4 years, Charlton, is that when you will not address what you're doing wrong, you need to put another face on it. And that's what white America did, Charlton. They understood the systematic racism in America. They knew what Colin Kaepernick stood for. But if you recognize that, Charlton, then you say we're doing wrong as a country. It's just like when we look at the policing situation in America now, and everybody says, well, there's a couple of bad apples in the barrel. Well, until those good apples push those bad apples out of the barrel, Charlton, then the whole barrel is infected with those bad apples. And that's what white society is. They don't want to address the situation of what they do wrong. It's just like when Ahmaud Arbery was shot back in February. He was hunted down like a dog in the street, Charlton, and shot by two white men. Well, three white men chased him. One of them shot him. And it was covered up even by the police department.
By law enforcement,
And that it was justified. They said he was a burglar and all these other things, Charlton. Breonna Taylor shot in her own apartment because the police go to the wrong apartment. And when we look at these situations, and you know, the covering for the police and the locals will say, well, they made a mistake. Well, think about if they were breaking into White Houses, Charlton, the wrong house, and going in shooting up everybody. But they know that blacks live in certain neighborhoods, Charlton, so they can be callous about their actions. And if they say collateral damage, oh, well, it's collateral damage.
Yeah, we know we talk about what are we going to do when the marching stops and when people go back to work and whatever they're doing. I always love reading this, Big C. We the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. It's a preamble to the Constitution. It's a living, breathing document. I really want to make sure we take care of that as far as we can, Big C.
I say all the time, Charlton, that document's a damn lie. Which one of those guys who wrote and believed in that document went out to their slaves and said, okay, you guys are free. You don't have to work for me anymore. I'm not going to beat you anymore. I'm not going to rape your women anymore. I'm not going to sell your children from you anymore to another slave owner. So if you believe in that document, then you believe in that BS that they sold to, that they did not protect their slaves. Did they give the slaves the same right that's in that document? That's what you have to ask yourself. The people who wrote that document, did they believe that those slaves should endure what that document said? If they did not believe that those slaves had the right that document laminated, Charlton, then that document's a damn lie.
That's why we have the right to vote, and it is a living, breathing document. And that
we did not get the right to vote out of that document.
No, I know, but that's
think about when the Voting Rights Act was passed.
Yeah.
Think about that. The Voting Rights Act was passed 200 years after that document, Charlton. So that document had nothing to do with the voting rights. That came from blacks, protesting for the right to vote, losing many black lives, Charlton. Blacks being killed for other blacks getting the chance to vote. It had nothing to do with that document. That document spoke about the oppression of black people. If you read it for what it's worth, and the people who wrote it and their actions after they wrote that document did not include black people.
That's why you got to look at the amendments. The amendments, you can add amendments to the Constitution. There's no
amendment to that statement, Charlton.
But yes, that's not true, Big C. That's why we have civil rights. That's why they made amendments for us. You can change things, and that's why it's important for people to vote. And we got to understand that's what amendments are for. That's why they have the anti-lynching bill on POTUS desk right now. It's an amendment. It doesn't mean it's going to sign it.
It's been there since 1920.
Yep.
1920, the anti-lynching bill has been in front of Congress and the Senate. 1920. I don't know if you know the math, but that's about 100 years.
Yeah.
100 years, Charlton, of white control in America and 400 years of oppression of black people, saying, no, we still believe in lynching.
Yeah, I know, but without the amendment, they wouldn't even be able to do it. So that's why it's a living, breathing document. We all have our own thoughts on that. I do want to get your thoughts on something, because I'm big on hoping that we can keep people safe. And I believe that the NFL, all 32 teams, they have a guide. They've been given a guide, Big C, if the guide makes any sense. They've been given a guide for reopening the season in what's called a COVID-19 playbook. So they know that they're expecting people to get sick. They're expecting people to test positive, but they're giving them a playbook, Big C. It's not for the owners to rub skin and trade sweat. It's for players before we have a vaccine for it, Big C. Your thoughts?
In this playbook, Charlton, does it say for players to stay away from each other?
No.
Because you can't play the game
No.
if that's the case.
No.
They're saying that, okay, players got to be at least 6 feet away from each other in the locker room. I don't know if you've ever been in a professional locker room, Charlton, but if you're in a professional locker room, the lockers are right adjacent to each other. And they're all about 3 feet wide, what the lockers are, Charlton.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to take out a lot of locker rooms. And now when you look at training camp, you go into training camp, you have 53 guys during the regular season, but in training camp you have 90 to 95 guys. So you have an expanded situation. So how are you going to be able to keep this away, Charlton? Normally they bring in extra lockers during training camp to facilitate the extra bodies that are in there.
Yeah.
But the key element to me is, how do you keep social distancing once you get on the practice field? You cannot stay 6 feet apart, Charlton. So when the quarterback has his hand up under the center's butt, I'm not sure what the distance is in that, Charlton.
Shotgun formation.
I'm not sure what that distance is.
Yeah. Well, they're going to do the shotgun formation, Big C, that way. But who's going to tackle? You're going to see all kind of yards records being broken if they come back and play sports. Nobody's going to want to tackle anybody. But you think about it, would this be the time that Donald Trump's tweet over the weekend to Roger Goodell, he challenged the NFL, Roger Goodell, on saying that, I guess there's a video that some African Americans released, inconspicuously missing where any white American players putting their voice and their pictures behind it. A lot of people tweet and text, hey, we're with you, but they didn't get in the video for some reason. Doesn't make any sense. But is this a time that Goodell will listen to Trump's tweet? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the call on that video, Charlton, was made by Michael Thomas, a black player from the New Orleans Saints, who blasted Drew Brees for the negative comments that he made. He called upon other black players, Charlton. He didn't call on any white players to be a part of the video because they have not dealt with the racial atrocities that have occurred in America. And this has been a black plight. I understand they work with white guys, Charlton, but these white guys have to stand on their own. They have the ability to make their own video. They don't have the coattails on the black players in the league.
Yeah.
But as I looked at Roger Goodell in his statement last week, Charlton, on Friday, where he denounced racism, saying he did not listen to black players, Roger Goodell did that statement, rogue. He did not get the blessing of the owners in the NFL talk. But there were 32 guys that Roger Goodell did not consult about the statement that he was going to make to the media about how the NFL had not listened to black players. Roger Goodell was speaking for himself, not the owner. So it's going to be interesting what the situation comes about from this. I know there's been some owners that are animate saying that no players will take a knee. They will be out if they do that, Charlton, but they have to do it in solidarity. If the players are going to stand together, they have to stand together 100% in the league. And they have to let the owners know that they are a union, and they have to be backed by that union, whether it's white, black, Charlton.
Yeah.
They all have to take a knee in uniformity or do not come out on the field.
Yeah, it's amazing. We've heard from Roger Goodell came out and talked about it. NASCAR has come out and talked about it. And it's amazing. There's more white guys in NASCAR, maybe not more than the NFL, but more prominent names in NASCAR. And they've all spoken and made their own video. It didn't take a black man to call them. I mean, it's just sometimes you wonder if your brethren are with you or not. Big C, Major League Baseball.
Bubba Wallace actually did call him to the plate on that. And that's the reason why they spoke out. He's a black driver.
Yep.
And Bubba Wallace got them all together to understand the plight of black people in America.
Yeah, and not one of them said, I can't support somebody who won't stand for a national anthem. Big C, it's all fair and love and war. Major League Baseball, the Chicago Cubs president of operations, Theo Epstein, says that he will examine the hiring policies of the Chicago Cubs. And also, he's hoping that all the 30 franchises in Major League Baseball, Big C, will also take a look at that too. And he mentioned in questioning his own, again, Michael Jackson told us, look at the man in the mirror, and he had his own problems too, but we all must look at the man in the mirror. And he said that in questioning his own hiring practices in the light of social unrest and following the May 25th tragic shooting of George Floyd in Minneapolis. In fact, it's a tragic murder. I apologize. The knee on the neck and the shooting of Mr. Arbery down in Georgia. Seeing these things back to back, along with Breonna Taylor, how she was tragically shot. And he's hired a black scouting director, a farm director in the past, but the majority of the people that he's hired, if he's being honest, which we're just asking for honest dialogue, if he's being honest, he said, most of them look like me. And he said that during a conference today, Big C, that something needs to change, and I need to ask myself why. And I think a lot of them are starting to at least have that public dialogue as opposed to just tweeting about it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, dialogue is always an interesting word, Charlton, when they want to make statements. Actions is what we see on television in the streets every day, Charlton. That's action. That's not people making statements.
Yeah.
That's actions. And I've heard statements my entire professional life, Charlton, by people, well, we got to do more. We got to do more. We got to lend a hand. We got to reach out. I've heard these statements, and these have been idle statements. Lip service is easy to serve, and we've gotten that for decades from management, from politicians, Charlton, is lip service. Vote for me, and I'll change your way of life. Hire me, and I'll make sure that there's fair hiring practice.
Yeah.
And then when they get in, Charlton, it's status quo. It's not as easy as what you think.
Right.
And it's not as easy as what we want to think from the outside, because they work against resistance, Charlton, and resistance is the toughest thing to change.
Yeah.
It's what wear down mountains and make sand, Charlton, resistance. So as we look at society and everybody has made these statements, why is it now that they have to make these statements? And as long as you've been living in privilege, you're okay with that.
Yeah.
You're okay as long as it doesn't affect you financially and socially. You don't see what's outside your fence when you live in that gated community protected. You won't even drive through the hood, Charlton. You won't. And you say these people live like rats in the slums because they can't get out because they've been redlined. They can't get decent jobs. They can't get decent medical care. And who has been in control of that, Charlton? The elected officials, not the athletes in those cities.
Yeah.
The elected officials who do not allow funds to go into those communities, the banks who will not give them loans to get better housing. This is the reason why the frustration keeps overboiling in America.
Yeah, that's why we got to vote, Big C. Phoenix Coyotes made Xavier Gutierrez the first Latino president and CEO in NHL history. Gutierrez's hiring was announced today by Alex Morallo, who became the first Latino controlling owner when he bought the majority stake in the Coyotes last year. Big C, your thoughts?
And when you think about that, Charlton, how promising it is, you think about the state of Arizona, the last state, to have a Super Bowl held up because they would not make Martin Luther King Day, national holiday, Charlton, and to now have the first Latino owner in the NHL, a predominantly white league. You don't have a black owner, but you have a Latino owner, and you have a Latino president now, Charlton. You think about the advancement of that culture in America, and yet the President Trump wants to call them the Brown Menace.
Yeah.
But this shows you, when given equal opportunity, regardless of your culture, what you can advance to in America. And this is a prominent sign, Charlton. And this is what you do. You hire people that look like you.
Yeah.
You have a Latino owner. He goes out and hires a Latino president, CEO, someone who communicates and thinks like him, Charlton. This is what all the white professional leagues have done forever in their existence, Charlton. They hire people that look like them because when they sit down at the table, they don't want to be uncomfortable in their conversations. And trust me, they still tell racial jokes at the table, so they don't want to be handcuffed in their own facility telling a racial joke.
Yeah, and I know people can change anywhere in the world. If you look, there's more white people that are marching in the streets for Black Lives Matter than even black Americans, or even all over the world. That's what I've seen. I want to just close out, Big C. I know we want to see sports get back together. To me, I say put it on pause until next year when they're closer to a vaccine. No one tells their child to go out in that running building so you can play football in a burning building, Big C. NCAA, more college athletes have already tested positive for COVID-19, and I think 22 states have already seen a rise. Arkansas State, 7 athletes in 3 sports. Marshall, 2 football players, 1 employee. Oklahoma State, 3 athletes. Iowa State, student workers and athletic staff. Alabama, 5 football players. Big C, we can't wait to get those boys back out there playing. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you got to understand that these athletes are an economic wheel for these universities, for these professional leagues, Charlton. It's not about the owners. The owners are not going to go out there and be around the players. The chancellor of the university is not going to go out there and go habitate with the players. They're not going to stay in the dorms with them. They're going to stay in those gated, gilded homes that they're in, Charlton. They can sacrifice these athletes. They're replaceable. They are what you call a commodity.
Yeah.
Commodities are what you trade around, and they do that all the time. If you lose a few athletes to this COVID-19, Charlton, in the greater scheme of things, will the general public give a damn? No, they won't, Charlton. They won't, nor will these universities care. These are symbolic people that they're caring about the bottom line. And the bottom line is the sacrificial lamb, how many they can trade.
Yeah.
Just like the original Wall Street, Charlton, in New York, where slaves were traded for economic gain. This is the same thing you're dealing with athletes.
Well, they got to get a vote. In tennis, star tennis player Novak Djokovic says that it's impossible to play the U.S. Open with extreme COVID-19 measures in place. Now, here's a guy that's what a lot of young college players should listen to, and even professional players should listen. Here's a tennis player. He's not tackling anybody. He's not being blitzed by anybody. He's not having to block or tackle anybody, Big C. He's a tennis player, and all he has to do is touch the tennis ball that the opponent hit, and he says it's impossible to play the U.S. Open because he cares more for his health, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, Novak is a sensible man, understanding that, not playing a few tennis tournaments is not going to cost him financially. He's well off.
Yeah.
But he's more worried about his long-term health than somebody having short-term enjoyment watching a match.
Yeah, Aaron Andrews, $55 million settlement because a white man saw a white woman naked. Colin Kaepernick says, stop killing black people. And the NFL owners, all white except for Sean Khan, decided not to give him a job. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports anywhere in the world. Say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Big C, I love that people are voting. Black lives do matter. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, as we look at the emphasis on the NFL being back in 94 days, I wonder what precautions are they taking at the high school level as far as those young men, Charlton, coming back to play football, because you cannot practice social distancing in a high school, Charlton, if you look at the minimal size of those locker rooms. What are you going to do to keep these young boys safe across America? And once again, thank you and appreciate you all, the frontline healthcare workers, the nurses, doctors, first responders. Stay safe, stay strong.
The sun never set on the British Empire. The sun's never set on Black Lives Matter. And the sun's never set on Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence or racism. If you know anybody going through that problem, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.